Hey everyone, welcome to this edition of the Potomac Local Live podcast. I'm Uriah Kaiser, your host, publisher of PotomacLocal.com. Joining us today on the podcast is Heather Mitchell. She's running for Virginia House District 2 for the House of Delegates in Richmond. The district encompasses both Prince William County and Stafford County. There are precincts on the eastern side of Prince William County, Woodbridge, and there are precincts in Stafford County. And Heather, I'll tell you, when this district was created in the most recent round of redistricting in 2011, I called this the Potomac Local District, right? Because when I started this business, that was the area, like literally that was the area that I said, we're going to put a flag in the ground and cover this area, and then just suddenly they drew a district out of redistricting that encompassed that. It was so weird. So thanks for coming on. You are the Republican candidate. You are seeking to unseat a current Democrat, Jennifer Carroll Foy, who was elected in 2017 in this seat. So we've covered a lot of ground here in the past few minutes. We know this district isn't that old. It's less than 10 years old. It has been held once. It's flipped many times, right? It was first held by Mark Dudenheffer, Republican. Then it flipped to Michael Futrell, who was the Democrat, the first black elected Democrat to the state legislature in Stafford County. And then Jennifer Carroll Foy won the seat. Futrell, Dudenheffer won it back and then chose not to run. Then Foy came in and won in 2017, and now here we are. Yep. You are running for the seat. So that's the history. Right? Talk a little bit about why you are running for the seat.
Okay, well, first off, thank you and good morning, Uriah. Thank you for having me on. To understand why I'm running for the seat, you have to know a little bit of my background. I moved to Virginia 5 years ago. My husband is active duty Marine Corps, and he's been in now 26 years. And we've moved all over the United States. We lived in Japan for 6 years. And when we moved to Virginia in 2014, we decided that we wanted to put some roots down, finish raising our kids here. I've got 3 kids. And when we moved here, my oldest daughter, Josie, she was starting at Marymount up in Arlington. My middle Savannah, she was going into high school as a freshman, and my son was starting middle school. And I really instantly liked the area when we first got here. And about 6 months in, we decided, all right, we're going to buy a house. We've always lived on base. My kids have always gone to DOD schools. So I never really had to worry about property taxes, what types, of schools, my kids were attending, because, they went to DOD schools. They were the same wherever we went. And when we bought the house in North Stafford, settled down, I do what I always did. I looked to volunteer, get involved in the community. And I started volunteering for the local committee, started working committee? On the Republican committee. Mm-hmm. And I started volunteering on races, 2 statewide races. I've worked on a delegate race, and I ended up in the job that I have now. I'm the senior aide to the chairman up in Prince William County.
Corey Stewart.
Which is an amazing job because we get to talk with constituents on a daily basis. And to being able to help to make our neighborhoods, our community better, however we can, it's very rewarding. Well, one of my duties as the senior aide is I follow the legislative priorities for Prince William County. So this last session, when the General Assembly met back in January and February, I literally sat at my desk for 46 days, and I would watch the live stream, and I'd flip between the House and the Senate, seeing how things, lined up with the priorities of Prince William. I took particular interest in Foy because not only did she represent Prince William, she represented me down in Stafford. And one of the first things that really struck me was I've never seen her in Stafford County. I've not heard of a town hall, a meet and greet. I just never saw her involved in the area. And then when I started looking at the bills that she was sponsoring, co-sponsoring, it just really struck me that, wow, she doesn't know what's going on in her own neighborhood, because the bills that she's proposing does not affect anybody on a daily basis, their lives. The people that I've talked to since I've been door knocking, their number one issue is infrastructure, transportation, because we've got I-95 and Route 1 running right through our district. And she's not even addressing any of those concerns.
So I will say that
Yeah.
I have reported on town hall meetings that she has held jointly with Senator Scott Surreville, and those have been in schools in North Stafford. And I will also say that she was at a ribbon cutting for Widewater State Park when it opened. She was one of the
I did see the picture for that.
Right.
The problem is there's no advertisement to let anybody know. I know that she just held a town hall, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, in Stafford. The only way I knew about that was because I actively sought out her Facebook page to find out, when her next town hall meeting was going to be. Because I know she's done some up here in Prince William.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't able to go, but a friend of mine went, and the turnout was maybe 20 people, half of which were either other candidates or staff. 3 people were there on my behalf, and the rest, I think, there was about 7 people that showed up.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is there's not an open line of communication of having the people that you're representing being able to talk to you.
So we'll ask this question of her, and I'll tell you, as of this recording, we were scheduled originally to interview her today, this afternoon after this interview, but she's asked to reschedule, and so we will do that. We'll reschedule, and we will ask her this question. But since you brought up Foy, let's get into it, right? We were in January when during session was going on. We were mired in a controversy where whether or not we were thinking of whether or not we were going to still have a governor in office, right? We heard calls for his resignation after a picture of 2 men in a college yearbook wearing blackface, and the governor admitted to having that was his college yearbook, and he apologized, and then the next day sort of retracted it and came back and said, that may not be me. There was some doubt, and Foy and many Senate Democrats, House Democrats called for the governor to step down, and that never happened, right? So let's get into that. When you're talking about when you're out door knocking and talking to constituents, I imagine that has to be something that comes up.
It is. A lot of people are embarrassed by the top 3 officials of our state. It is very hypocritical that politics has become so partisan, and you've got one group finger pointing at another, and it's back and forth. And when you've got your top elected official of your state saying one thing one minute, apologizing, and then the next minute saying, oh no, that's not even me, it really begs to question, how well can he effectively lead everybody in the state, regardless of race or gender? When you are flip-flopping back and forth on something that's controversial, either say, yes, that was me from the get-go, or say no. But to keep going back and forth, it just seems it's very upsetting.
Do you hear
really
do you hear from voters who say that they're vote was affected by that, or even their impression of the state's governor was affected by that, or do you think that enough time has passed between then in late January, early February, and today in early September, September 5th this is, do you think enough time has passed that voters have kind of forgotten about it?
No, they haven't. I still have people ask me about it when I'm talking to them on their front steps, and they're extremely disgusted. They are disgusted that a person could sit there and do something extremely offensive and just basically ignore it, not listen to the constituents of, his state. And most of the people that I talk to, I mean, politics in general, they are over it. Mm-hmm. They really are. They have no faith in the leadership, and they really believe that they're not there on their behalf.
So Democrats have been very successful in recent years of winning statewide office. Obviously, we have Democrats in the top three seats: governor, lieutenant governor, and not Commonwealth attorney, attorney general. And so we've seen them be successful in raising money. And this used to be, in the 90s, a very Republican-controlled state. And things have sort of changed, right? And you could probably trace it back to 2013, Terry McAuliffe's election to governor. And so the state's been under Democratic control for a long time. What are you hearing amongst Republicans, you being plugged in not only to the Stafford Stafford Republican Committee, you also campaigned with Corey Stewart, right? Corey Stewart, you were involved with his campaign. You now work in his office. He had two failed runs, one for Senate and earlier before that run for governor. So you've spent a lot of time going across the state on those campaigns and working with Mr. Stewart. How can Republicans win in this Democratic-controlled state? What do they need to do?
Okay, you were breaking up on me a little bit. So
Okay. So I'll repeat the question.
I heard the question: how can Republicans win?
Right. What do Republicans need to do? I mean, again, that's correct. That's the question. What do Republicans need to do to win in Virginia?
They need to get their message out. I will say the way the Republicans and as a whole package their messaging is not very well. Democrats are very good at messaging and skimming over the controversial parts. They get the part out that, grabs your attention, and, they stick to their talking points. If you actually sat and looked at what the Republicans stand for, I've talked to Democrats at the door that both of us agree. We want good roads. We want lower taxes. We want good schools. And the way that the Republicans have been going about it, they're not, I guess you could say in a way, they're not tooting their own horn loud enough as to they've passed really good legislation. With the Republican caucus, they were able to get universities and colleges to freeze tuition so that the higher education is not getting more expensive. The Republican-led House and Senate, they were able to pass to where everybody's getting checks back in their mailbox this month for a refund on their state income taxes. So Republicans are trying to give money back, and it seems that the Democrats are trying to have more government control, which costs more money. But the way they're doing their messaging, I have to hand it to the Democrats. I mean, they are better at messaging.
One of the things that we saw over the summer was the special session that Governor Northam called about gun control following the mass shooting at Virginia Beach. The Republicans took heat from Democrats because that session lasted maybe about an hour and a half before Republicans decided to, dismiss the session and agree to take this up during the next regular session of the House following this fall's election. Is gun control something that Virginians have an appetite to talk about? There was a recent hearing, a committee 2 weeks ago in Richmond to address this. There's I believe the crime board in Richmond convened for this. Are you hearing? Are there fears among people in the district, in the second district, that that guns are a problem? I'm afraid to send my kid to school. I don't have, what are you hearing about this? And were the Republicans right to dismiss and take it up after the election?
Well, first off, I think Governor Northam calling the special session so fast after what happened in Virginia Beach, that was a emotional response, which everybody was just absolutely horrified as to what happened. He even admitted that any of the proposals that he put forth would have done nothing to stop what happened in Virginia Beach. So he was going in with proposals that he knew would have done nothing.
And that actually came out in a Roanoke Times article that a reporter quoted him at an event near Roanoke saying that.
Right. And I believe he was answering a Boy Scout. He was at a Boy Scout event. But the thing is yes, there is a issue going on with the shootings, but it's not so much about the guns. It's about mental health services that need to be looked into and expanded to get help. None of, like he said, none of the proposals that he was putting forth would have changed anything. What I'm hearing at the doors is people are more worried about their rights being taken away, because the only people that will be affected by any new legislation imposed are law-abiding citizens. Criminals don't obey the law to begin with, so it's not going to affect them.
It's interesting you bring up the mental health angle, because it does seem that it does not get a lot of discussion. There's not a lot of talk about it. And the Virginia Sheriff's Association told Potomac Local that over the Memorial Day holiday this year, there were 0 patient beds to take people who were issued what's known as a temporary detention order, a TDO, and that's when a law enforcement officer basically comes and removes someone from a home because someone's in fear for their mental health or for their mental health. And over the Memorial Day weekend, there was no place for any of these officers to take these the subjects, right? We'll call them subjects, mental patients, but they needed evaluation, and there was nowhere for them to go. And so what you have are sheriff's deputies and police officers in Virginia spending hours with these subjects, sometimes entire shifts. Sometimes they're at the end of their shift, they're relieved by another officer or deputy, and then that new deputy then sits with this person, and this is. The Sheriff's Association is ringing bells about this, and when you say more needs to be done in the way of mental health, what specifically can we do to help these officers, help these deputies, and help the people who are suffering mental health? What can the state do?
Well, I think the state needs to work with each of the localities and work in conjunction so that it's not falling on these deputies having to basically babysit somebody because there's not room available. There needs to be more facilities throughout the state, because I've heard where some deputies are having to drive 2 and 3 hours outside of their jurisdiction to transport somebody. I think with the state, working in conjunction with the localities, getting it more in the neighborhood, I think the outreach would have a profound effect. People would know where to go, and it could be done locally.
I want to switch gears and talk about another controversy that arose during last session in January and February was Delegate Kathy Tran's bill. Delegate Kathy Tran, she serves in southern Fairfax County, Fairfax Station, just across the border from Prince William County, from Woodbridge, and she had a bill that was accused of being infanticide, right? Governor Northam went on WTOP radio and he explained the process and he is a pediatrician, he is a physician, and he offered up his best explanation as to what it would look like if a child was born, and then essentially made comfortable on the table, and then ultimately post-birth abortion. That raised a lot of eyebrows. It raised a lot of media coverage. I know we wrote about it. Are you hearing, again, is this something that you're hearing about? Is this something that, or do you think that enough time has passed between then and now in September that people are just, we've moved on?
Actually, no. My opponent was actually a co-sponsor of that bill. And the people in the second House district were horrified. And I'm talking about Republicans, Democrats, and independents. It's gotten to a point where they're placing no value on life whatsoever. And to sit there and support a bill that basically, it is infanticide. You're killing another human being, one that is fully formed, and it's hard to talk about because I can't wrap my mind around that. Roe v. Wade is law. I'm not disputing that, but the bill that was put forth by Delegate Tran and supported by my opponent is basically infanticide, and it's the taking of a child's life, because there's actually two victims. You've got the child and actually the mother. And that's what we need to talk about, because it's been very upsetting to a lot of people. I still have a hard time talking about it because, like I said, it's very hard for me just to wrap my head around that. That is a human life.
Your opponent, and I'll switch gears again. Your opponent was a big supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment, this ERA, which was originally introduced in Congress in the mid 70s and given sort of 8 years to be ratified. 1972. Sorry, early 1972. Thank you. And given about 8 years to be ratified by the states. And when that deadline came and went, the ERA kind of sort of went away, right? We didn't talk about it. But in recent years, it's come back up. States are ratifying it now. There is a big call to ratify this. Actually, Delegate Hala Ayala from the 51st District in Prince William County is on the forefront of this, and Jennifer Carafoy is supporting this effort. She actually, during a joint legislative dinner at the Prince William County Government Center in December, sort of lashed out at the supervisors, the Prince William Board of County Supervisors, for not supporting her call to urge state legislators to ratify the ERA. In November, the Board of County Supervisors decided not to endorse this call for ratification. They sort of made their own resolution, and they feared that the ERA was more about taking rights away from women or forcing people to use same-sex bathrooms, if you will. What's the argument here? This ERA, is it a good thing for the state and ultimately the country?
Actually, no. I was actually at that dinner back in December when Delegate Foy lashed out at the board. No, this bill was written in 1972. To put that into context, I was 2 years old when this bill was written. In my lifetime, I've seen a lot of legislation go through that actually help women. There are programs designed for women small business owners. By passing the ERA, those bills or programs become unconstitutional because you are favoring one gender over another. You're discriminating. And the language written in 1972 has a lot different meaning than it does in 2019. This is 47-year-old language. And it's very vague in a lot of areas. I mean, I am all for equal rights. I joke around with my husband going, apparently you've got rights that I don't have. Can you tell me what they are? There's not. We are equal. There has been so much done since 1972. The thing, too, is ratification for this ran out, I believe, in 1982. So basically, it's more of a identity politic maneuver is what it seems like to me of, oh, if you don't believe in the ERA, you are an evil, vile, human being because you don't believe in equal rights for women. Well, you know what? Yes, I do. But if they are that concerned, they need to write a new piece of legislation, reintroduce it, and then try to ratify that. But I think they're just, beating a dead horse, pardon, the pun, for a piece of, legislation that's almost as old as I am.
So we'll look for the ERA to come back, right? The supporters of this ratification effort told us that it's coming back for this next session. Another thing that we'll be talking about, as I understand, in this next session, also looking ahead, is our casinos, right? The casinos. There was a call to not only put a casino in Bristol, which is in the southwestern portion of the state, but Rosie's also has plans for an off-track betting facility parlor in Dumfries, right? And so the mayor of the town supports this. He's looking forward to the tax revenue and the economic development aspect of all of this coming into the town. But traditionally, right, if you wanted to gamble, you had to at least go to Maryland. But it seems like there are calls to put more casinos in Virginia, and this could be something that we could be talking about statewide this year. What do you think about all this?
I'll be honest, I have not read up enough about it as to having, you have a casino. Yes, it's great for the locality with the revenue that it'll bring in. But let's also look at the human effect. How is it going to affect the community? People. I know, you've got people that have gambling addictions. I'd like to dive a little deeper into studying it before I can really say if I favor it, yes or no.
So let's talk about the one thing that those who are listening to this most likely want to hear about, and that is the region's horrible traffic conditions on the roads.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, right? Because I know that above every other thing that we've talked about on this interview, you've got to hear most about why does my drive to work stink, and what are you going to do to make it better? And I think that's the question, and that's the question I pose to you. What are you going to do to make it better?
Well, that is the number one issue I hear at the doors. I can honestly say 9 out of 10 doors that I knock, when I ask them what is your number one issue, it is always infrastructure and traffic. I drive the length of the Second House District Monday through Friday. I live in Stafford. I work in Prince William. So I'm heavily involved in both ends. And I sit in traffic too on 95, Route 1. And it's very frustrating. I know this past session, Delegate Cole passed HJ 581, directing the Commonwealth Transportation Board. They're doing a study of 95. and the feeder roads that go to 95, which is also Route 1. So they're looking into that. But I'd kind of like to look outside of the box at other options. What's very interesting is there's 9 transportation regions in the state. The second House district straddles 2 different transportation regions.
Planning District 8 and Planning District 16.
Prince William belongs. Right. So as a elected representative, you need to go to both regional meetings to find out what's going on. I've been going to all of these meetings, and I've learned a lot. One of the things that I've learned is that I would, with the expansion of, I think it's the Longview Bridge.
Mm-hmm. The Long Bridge, which connects Arlington with Washington, D.C., and it is a bottleneck for Virginia Railway Express because no matter how many trains they can run, when they get to that bridge, it's a major traffic jam. And so they've been looking for funding to expand the capacity, right. Essentially build a new, wider bridge.
Right. And, with the wider bridge, then we can expand VRE's operation. See about running more trains. Actually, what I think would be great is if we could have VRE service on the weekends. I know my daughter, when she was going to school up in Arlington, if I could have jumped on a train to take up north, I would have done it. I would have seen my daughter a lot more. And I think, if people know that option is there, they'll start relying on it more. Also, in the Stafford area, I'd like to see OmniRide bus services brought down into Stafford, because what's happening is we've got a lot of constituents that live in Stafford. They drive up to Prince William to go to the commuter lots to get on the different services offered by OmniRide, because they've got the express buses that will take them straight to the Springfield, Franconia metro station. You've got other services that take them to Tyson's Corner, to the Pentagon, up into DC. These are services that I think, I'd like to see brought down into Stafford County, because it's all part of PRTC, which is the Potomac Rappahannock Transportation Commission. That's going to get a lot of people off of the roads on that stretch going from Stafford up into Prince William.
So currently the Stafford County contracts with the Martz Company to provide a commuter bus service. So there is commuter bus service in Stafford County. There has been for years. This fall, I believe, for the first time, OmniRide is going to run a bus from Stafford County, from North Stafford, and the funding is coming from an effort to expand the I-395 express lanes, right. Those toll lanes, right? So the funding is coming from that. So the state's picking up the tab, and so when we talk about weekend VRE service and we talk about expanding OmniRide options, the question is always, well, how do we pay for it? The last time the gas tax was raised was in 2013. That gave us about $1 billion more dollars for transportation in the state, and the last time before 2013 was 1986. That was the last time before that the gas tax was raised, and obviously that gas tax goes to funding these transportations. I think you also point out something that is very glaring, again, with the district straddling essentially two regions of the state, right? You have Northern Virginia, right. Which is a juggernaut of its own, right? And it's many of in addition to the state funding, which doles out federal money for projects, in addition to the county, right, which also can choose to fund projects, you have the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, and it takes some of that money that was generated by that 2013 legislation, and it scores and ranks projects that it deems necessary for funding. And then in Stafford County, just over the line right there at Quantico, you get into a different world where there is no regional transportation authority. You have FAMPO, which is the Fredericksburg Metropolitan Area Authority, but they're not a funding source, right? They don't control purse strings. They don't make any awarding. They just talk about problems and look for solutions and then urge people to solve the problems. So there's a lot of different cogs in this district.
Yeah.
What's the revenue solution? I mean, how do we pay for all that?
Well, I think first off, we need to put a lockbox on transportation funds so that money cannot be taken out to fund other projects. I mean, it's eventually put back in, but when you take money out of any type of transportation funding, it puts all these projects just to a screeching halt.
Which we saw with Governor McAuliffe before he left office. He took money from the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority and gave it to Metro to fund to give some additional funding to Metro, who this year shut down all of their stations. This summer shut down all of their stations south of Reagan National Airport for a rebuilding. We know that Metro needs to be rebuilt. So, but on the end of that, the NVTA lost a portion of their funding, and so it had to regroup.
So by starting out by doing that, that's a start. And it's not necessarily having to raise a new tax. I personally feel that if the state actually went to a zero-based budgeting system, and they could easily cut 10% from their budget to fund transportation. To me, I mean, it seems like a very practical solution that when you sit there and start at zero and have, justify this is why I need this funding, at a point you realize, wow, maybe this program that hasn't been used in, 15 years, maybe we really don't need to fund this anymore.
There's one thing I want to get you on the record about. Many times politicians, and many of them are Democrats, always say Metro, right? Metro to Woodbridge, Metro Extension, Metro South of Springfield. You have not said Metro in your statement about solving our area's traffic woes. So where do you stand on extending Metro south of Springfield?
Well, apparently that's been an idea that's been kicked around for the last 20 years, and nothing has come of it. I think Metro has enough problems right now trying to sustain themselves that I do not foresee the blue line coming down into Prince William as a solution.
Okay. Heather Mitchell is the Republican candidate for Virginia House District 2, the House of Delegates. Our election day is November 5th. I'm sure you'll be doing a lot of door knocking, a lot of handshaking. Between now and then, we wish you the best of luck in your campaign. And thank you so very much for joining us today on this edition of the Potomac Local Live podcast.
Thank you, Uriah. I really appreciate it. Thank you.